悪霊退散。
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we have to get on here once again and talk about bad decision making from the developers. Whether this come true or not true, simply just saying it is terrible. Over the past couple of weeks and months, I've been sort of in this phase where I've been trying to forgive the developers. I've been trying to fight for them. I've been telling people that, let's ease up on the negativity. They put out two great characters, Fakram and Armor King, and they went a couple of months without any major controversy. A lot of the controversy that surrounds Marizu, I personally think is just Twitter being so upset and so obnoxious as per usual. Yes, balancing hasn't happened yet, but I also think that there's real limitations because of it. You talk about replacing the whole entire balancing team that ruined the game, that ruined season 2. In my opinion, that is a big step, but also you need to give those guys time to be able to come up with a solution on how to fix the game, right? So I've been trying to do all of this spinning, all of this justification to basically give them time and give them forgiveness and give them understanding. But these guys, bro, they just need to just stop talking, bro. So a lot of people say, oh, the developers, they're not communicating right now. We really need some communication. We really need some back and forth. I'm in the camp of no, we don't. Every time those guys open their mouth, bro, it's chaos. I just personally think release the characters, release your updates, and stay silent. If the players want this, if the players want that, it's better if you say nothing, because they're just not good at interacting with the player base in this current environment. They know how to have fun and interact with players when the game is fun and balanced, but when the game is not fun and balanced for veteran players and some of the more hardcore pro players, they don't know what to do. A wise man never said nothing, and that's what they should do. That's what their MO should be. And over the past couple of months, they've been doing that until now. Now we have this news article, and I'm just shaking my head looking at the title of it. Before we read this, right, I want to show you guys a tweet from a person within the community so you guys can see what the already existing sentiment for the game is. Now, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with this. I'm just saying this is how the players feel already before this statement was made. This person says, most are fed up with the state of Tekken 8 and no communications or anything balance related. So whatever they show that isn't remotely picture perfect, let alone lazy, we will be met with resentment. It isn't that hard to imagine why people are crashing out over hands not touching or slop PNG t-shirts. So people are once again upset about this t-shirt that Marizu is wearing, but then they're also upset about how they made this custom t-shirt from Marizu and it changes her intro, but in her intro when she punches her hands together, they don't actually touch. So you can just see how Twitter is still looking for ways to really be upset about the game, and the developers should be aware of that, and they should be, trying to not cause any more chaos. Now here we are. You have this news article from VGC. Tekken series producer Harada says that he is quite interested in Capcom's decision to charge fans to stream upcoming Street Fighter 6 tournament finals. In quotes, he says, a lot of influencers are making big money off their streams. This is terrible, Harada. Harada-san, this is absolutely awful. First off, read the room. So for those of you who don't know, Street Fighter has their final cup of the year or whatever they call it, right? And usually it's free. Anyone can watch it. Just go to Twitch, go here, go there, and you can watch it. But since their fan base is mostly Japanese, right? When you look at them having 30,000 people playing the game, 21,000 of that is Japan. They are wildly popular in Japan, and no one could really explain how Street Fighter took over Japan like that, right? And two things. One, in Japan, pay-per-view events or paying for events is kind of cool. I don't know why Japan thinks paying for an event that used to be free is cool, but that's what they think. They think paying for an event is cool. Number two is, we know that Harada has been desperate to regain the audience that they kind of lost in Japan. Before Tekken 8 even came out, Harada talked about how arcades were dying and no one in Japan plays Tekken anymore. In the past, he also gave breakdowns of the demographics of how many people play the game. We know that NA and EU are the biggest demographics. Meanwhile, Japan makes up 3% of the player base. And a lot of the things that they've been doing over the course of Tekken 8 was trying to build upon that Japanese audience and make it grow. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but the thing that is wrong with that is how they went about doing it. They did the tech talks, mostly Japanese, rare translations from Michael Murray that is kind of like disconnected for the majority of the people who are showing up for balance, for this, for answers, right? You talk about the last one that they did and how, they didn't really say anything at the start of season 2 and players walked away still having a bunch of questions. And then this is how the whole, season 2 backlash started, because they were too busy trying to sell to Japan instead of trying to sell to the players who are already existing, right? We noticed because they told us that like they scheduled it on Japan's lunch break. They also read from the Japanese chat the whole time. That's why the scheduled time balloons by like an hour and 30 minutes, because this is just what they're after. And once again, there's nothing wrong with them trying to, dig into that Japanese audience and make their game more successful, but they're doing it at a cost of what they already have, right? Now, going back to Capcom, when Capcom decided to make this pay-per-view event pay-per-view, their whole entire non-Japanese audience was very, very upset, and it was trending on Twitter. You had a lot of big voices speak out against it. Now, even though they committed to the idea and they are still doing it, you once again have to understand that that Street Fighter has a majority Japanese audience, which is like 21, and we're just talking about the player counts we can see on Steam. We don't have the raw numbers of how many people's actually playing the game or how many people's watching tournaments, but we just know that, and we're talking about Steam player base, Japan makes up 20,000 people, and then the rest of the world makes up like 6,000. So in that sense, yes, it makes sense for Capcom to continue doing it, even though it's greedy and predatory and people didn't like it. Now, for Tekken, where the majority of their player base is NA and EU and only 3% is Japan, it does not make sense at all for Harada to be entertaining this idea whatsoever. The backlash that they're going to get is going to be amplified because there's not going to be that many Japanese people standing around cheering, but then also you have more Americans and European people playing your game than anything else. And switching your event from free to pay-per-view will not fly. And the other thing about Harada is how he's talking about how influencers are making big money off their streams. That sounds like you want to take money from like the Maximilians, the main mans, the content creators. This really just shows a level of disrespect for your audience because, when you talk about Tekken 7, they said tournaments was the reason why it sold 12 million copies. And what makes up tournaments? We know that pros definitely make up tournaments. And for Bandai Namco, once again, they're afraid to put up big money. At least Capcom is putting up $1 million at the end of each tournament to, support their players. Bandai Namco, while Harada brags that they are bigger than Capcom, they put out way smaller portions of money each and every year. So you don't really support the pro players like that. And then the content creators, we know you definitely don't support those guys because you block the most innocent, the most helpful, the most careful ones. If someone isn't like bowing down and kissing your feet at every wrong turn, then they get blocked on Twitter, right? And also when you talk about how influencers and content creators really helped Tekken grow, we know this for Eris. I know a lot of people don't know who Eris is anymore. He retired in the era of Tekken 7, transitioning to Tekken 8. But Eris at one point in time, aka Void in the Puddle, at one point in time was the biggest streamer in the FGC, right under people like Maximilian and stuff like that. He was like bigger than Main Man. And when he streamed Tekken had enough viewership totally to push it past Street Fighter.
Eris's numbers, when added to Tekken, push it over Street Fighter's viewership numbers.
My stream pushes Tekken ahead of Street Fighter. That is sick.
Every single time you saw Harada bragging about how Tekken is bigger than Street Fighter, that would not be possible if Eris wasn't streaming the game. And as you can see in Tekken 8, Eris isn't streaming the game, and Street Fighter is just running laps around Tekken 8. But also another thing is that they upset their entire audience. They upset the influencers, they upset the content creators, they upset the pros, they upset the commentators, they upset the players. And then now you're talking about trying to like reach in their pockets and take the little money that they do make. They know fighting games are niche. They know a lot of people, are using this as like a side hustle or using this to like make ends meet. So you're trying to reach into their pockets and like, oh, they making some good money. Us, $1 billion corporation, we want that. Bro, I don't understand what Harada is. I don't get it. I don't get it. If you look at other things, such as these events that we've been having streamed and people who are participating, whether they're average streamers or big influencers, a lot of big companies are coming in and putting money into their advertisement for these events. A lot of influencers are making big money off their streams, but the revenue for our games doesn't reflect any of this stuff. It's quite interesting to see how that might change. It's kind of crazy because no other video game does that. Every video game has the top guys who are sponsored by some random like chair brand or keyboard brand, and then that's just good, right? That means that your top streamer has more income to sustain and do this for longer and market your game for longer. How are you going to look at that and say we want a piece? Where's our piece? Harada says, for example, most tournaments are licensed for free to people who want to run them or stream them. Occasionally, you're seeing that certain events pop up where they're charging pay-per-view or something like that. Seeing how the money side of this changes, that's something I'm quite interested in. Can we talk about something as well? Is how much money Tekken 8 is making. Now, I know we don't have the definitive numbers, but I do know that they made 3 million copies sold. They should be closing in on 4 million copies sold. If they keep saying stuff like this, it won't happen. But we know that their DLC characters are massively successful. But then also, when you talk about all of the skins in the shop and the stuff that they're selling in this game, we know that they are refusing to balance the game because of the things that I explained at the start of the video. But they are still constantly updating the shop. They're still constantly talking about the battle pass. I mean, today on Twitter, Nakatsu was talking about how everyone get prepared for a new battle pass and it's going to be amazing. The interviewer says, we asked if he's specifically referring to Capcom's plans to charge for a Capcom Cup and SFL World Championship streams. Harada replied, that's just one example of many. At this point, I want to take a look at some of the things that, the players, the influencers are saying about this on Twitter. I think there are not even enough influencers in Tekken 8 and definitely not big money for who is streaming Tekken. We don't have the same views as the huge influencers streaming Street Fighter, especially in Japan. There are no comparisons possible in my opinion. If you ever go to Twitch and look at Tekken, you could probably count the quote-unquote big guys. It's like 10 of them. I would imagine so many of those guys would quit. So many of those guys would jump ship. So many of those guys would not even watch tournaments. You're already struggling to get people to watch tournaments because the balancing is horrendous and no one wants to sit there and watch Lydia and Anna, and trying to charge people for that is ridiculous. I will skip every tournament and act like tournaments do not exist if they try to make a pay-per-view. Another person says, this guys think we're going to pay for Lydia versus Anna Grand Finals. Joe Crush says, how about retirement? And this is the thing, right? Usually when people say for Harada to retire, I'm like, no guys, be nice, don't do that, don't say that. But they're kind of bringing it upon themselves with the stupid things that they say. Mike Hollow says, yes, what Tekken needs right now is to pay to watch streams, not balance patches, new modes, or meaningful updates to the store. No, none of that. What Tekken needs is pay-per-view events. Genius. Another person says, I love how fighting game devs are now just openly want to milk the FGC for every last drop while offering absolutely nothing new or substantial in return. You have Roman Jelly who says, I signed up to go to the TWT finals, but if they actually go through with this, I'm not going to go. What an absurd statement, P. Your game is alive because of the passion of the community. Gatekeeping them would only kickstart its demise. We know that tournaments are the most successful they've ever been. We saw prices for Evo and other events like Combo Breaker and whatnot go from $30 all the way up to like $200. And for Bandai Namco to not take their cut from that and to instead try to charge the players for more stuff, it just shows how lost they truly are.